welcome to the Sutliffian report. But I'm hoping, I'm just hoping that somebody out there in the world of mass media wakes the hell up. Why? Because if they don't, they're going. Right now, we are dealing with the biggest problem in the news world ever. It is that the majority of the news is now a propaganda stream. CNN, MSNBC, and all these major networks are now more of a propaganda ministry than they ever were a news station. News stations. I'm so disgusted with the amount of gibberish and propaganda. It's crazy. Now, I say this because I'm upset, because I'm tired of seeing people coming out and saying, "Oh, you got to wear a mask." Well, the truth of the matter is, if masks work, then why do you social isolate? If social isolation works, then why do you wear a mask? And then why do you have a governor telling you to wear a mask when, we have things like the CDC saying you should not wear a mask, for healthy people should not wear masks. Then they say, CDC also says, if you wear a mask over 2 hours, that's unhealthy. But we have all these kids, and young adults working at places like Walmart and places like your local shopping center, your local grocery store, and they're forced to wear masks for 8 to 10 hours at a time. Again, unhealthy. But nobody's telling them this. Read the academic studies done on this, the medical studies done on this. They've been out since 2015. They're putting people in the same danger as COVID-19 does. Because wearing a mask for over 2 hours, here I'm saying, over 2 hours, can create the same problem, which is, the lack of oxygen getting to you. And then if you're wearing it for more than 2 hours, your mask is getting wet with your own stuff, and you're not getting enough oxygen because you're breathing in the carbon dioxide. Again, that is hypoxia. That is what COVID-19 creates. So we're telling people to create hypoxia, go out there, wear a mask, create your own hypoxia. Insane. Now, why are we shut down? In the beginning, there was a reason. Now there is absolutely none, because it's okay to go looting as long as you don't go to church. It's okay to go looting as long as you don't go to work. It's okay. Did you hear these Democratic governors? They let people, we had an attorney general let people go free right after getting arrested for rioting and looting. Oh, she made sure they all got to go free. This happened in New York State also because of the insane bail rules. These people spent no time in jail. You want to know why there's looting night after night? It's because the same people get caught each night, and guess what? They keep putting them back out instead of keeping them from causing more harm. That's what we call insanity. I'm livid with all this. I have so many things I'd like to scream and yell about this. I'm just livid when I start thinking about the insanity. Now, I do want to get into some of this insanity that's going on, and I'll just try and get into my news stories here. This is, like I said, I'm livid on all this, so you're going to hear a portion of this tonight. Let's talk about where the Italians have it right. The Italians, I want to talk about these Italians. They are doing the right thing. They are complaining about this situation. So let me pull that one up, and the Italians, like I say, they've got it right. Here we go, and hopefully it will come up. That's the joy. Here we go. Now this one comes from Zero Hedge. Enraged Italians abandon mask, denounce pandemic as a scam. This came out June 3rd by Tyler Durden. Hundreds of Italian demonstrators gathered in Rome's Piazza del Popolo on Tuesday, ditching their masks in a protest against the Italian government's lockdown restrictions aimed at controlling the spread of COVID-19. The group, which calls themselves the Orange Vest, is led by retired Carabinieri General Antonio Papalardo, who doesn't believe children should be made to wear masks. Refusing to wear a mask himself, Papalardo said, "These lungs are mine. I will take care of my lungs. Breathing is sacred." The people packing the square didn't adhere to social distancing guidelines set by the government. Papalardo portrayed such containment measures as an infringement of freedom. Other speakers at the protest asserted that pandemic never existed and alleged that politicians had played it up to enhance their hours. This is going to be happening around the world, people. Mark my words. This will soon be happening. Elsewhere in Rome, opposition leaders, including League Party Chief Matteo Salvini, marched on Tuesday to demand that the government resign, unveiling an Italian flag along Via del Grossa, Via del Corso, Rome's central artery. The gathering soon turned into a procession led by Salvini and two other party leaders, Giorgia Meloni and the right-wing brothers of Italy, Antonio Tajani, who co-founded former PM Silvio Berlusconi's center-right Forza Italia. I mean, this is it. People are starting to realize this is all a freaking scam, just so people can have control and keep control. I mean, it's one thing to, the start of it made sense. But the insane truth is you are now out there promoting what? Shutdown for what reason? Name one. Name one. You can't. That's the problem. You can't, because all these Democratic governors decided to back others, to allow things like looting. Looting's okay, but don't go to church. That's their concern. So a lot of people are concerned that this now shutdown, the continued shutdown, at least in New York State, is not to suppress more COVID-19. It is to control people choosing to go to church and go to work and become independent of the state. So they won't need socialism. Socialism is forced on you by you not having to accept the state funds because you support yourself. This is the scary, freaky stuff that's going on in the world today. Now, Breitbart did an outstanding article this week. ABC News, no major coronavirus spike in 21 states that lifted lockdown restrictions early. This is by Edwin Mora. It came out May 29th. There was no significant increase in Chinese coronavirus hospitalizations, fatalities, and the percentage rate of people testing positive for the disease in 21 states that eased lockdown restrictions on May 4th or earlier, including 7 that did not implement a shutdown order at all. An ABC News investigation reportedly found this week. Health analysts consider the number of hospitalization fatalities and the positivity test rate, particularly the 7-day average, given the swings in the figures reported daily, to be good proxies for the severity of COVID-19, the new coronavirus disease. Eric Strauss from ABC News identified these 21 states as South Carolina, Montana, Georgia, Mississippi, South Dakota, Arkansas, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Wyoming, Kansas, Florida, Indiana, Missouri, Ohio, and Nebraska. On Thursday, he wrote on Twitter, he looked at 21 states eased restrictions on May 4 or earlier and found no major increase in hospitalizations, deaths, or percentage of people testing positive. Are you catching this? This is now old news, people. This is almost a week. This is almost a whole week later that I'm reporting this. This came out May 29th. Think about it. Are your TV stations telling you this? Probably not. We have to get this news out there. For those of you listening in the chat room, I'm posting this in the chat room. I beg of you, get this information out on Facebook, get it out on Twitter, get it out wherever. I am shadow banned on Twitter. I can't talk to anyone. I try, believe me. It's insane. So I've tried opening a new account. We'll see how things go from there. I'm very, very frustrated and disgusted with Twitter. I have friends that are shadow banned who are, doing this important work. Like Todd Bensman mentioned, he's shadow banned. He's having problems where Twitter says they're a good social media company. Well, if you're a good social media company, why are you deleting customers? Why are you deleting relationships? Why are you stopping people from communicating? If your goal is not to become a publisher, and your goal is to be a platform, why are you doing those things? Now, I asked the same thing of LinkedIn. LinkedIn this week refused access to the man who is the head of law enforcement today, an outstanding law enforcement magazine that communicates extremely important issues for law enforcement and people who are interested in staying informed about the things around them. I was so disgusted that Kyle Reyes was restricted. And that, of course, they don't tell you why you're restricted. They just say, well, we can't talk about it. It's against our policy to tell you. So you don't allow due process to American citizens. Is that correct, is what I've asked them. That's the thing that has to be asked every time when you get shut down by a social media platform. In general, I will say this. Facebook allows a rebuttal in general. However, I've seen them not allow a rebuttal. I've seen Twitter doesn't even bother. They just, and this is the thing with Facebook. If they think you've gained too much influence, they make it impossible for you to be successful. Google does this with YouTube. They shut people down because you're telling the truth. And this is the problem. They're trying to limit information. Now, we have an information highway, but the information highway is littered with blockades by major companies out there. Google now does not allow you to do pointed searches and dates and times. So if you're looking for something anywhere older than 5 years, news, I'm talking about news, trying to find anything older than 5 years, you're going to have a problem. You're not going to be able to find it through Google. Why? Because unless you're paying some extreme amount of money to get some special search engine besides Google or some special adaptation, they've removed your ability to search for the specific dates. That's been gone for a few years now. It's driving me nuts. I do a lot of research, and I need that back. This is the point of controlling access to information. They don't want you to learn stuff. They don't want you to look at your history. Why? Because they want to promote a propaganda angle. And this is the stuff that has me angry and very, very fumed this week. Like I said, I'm angry this week. I wish I wasn't angry, but this is where I'm at. This week in my town, in my city, we had rioters downtown. My son's a medic, and he got caught in this. It scares the crap out of me to think that, my son is a medic, that he might have to go down and help someone while they're beating and beating people up, looting. There was one incident where somebody took a huge 8-foot-long 2x4, beating a woman with it in my city. There was no excuse except for looting. No excuse. Now, this is the cause where many people are out there buying weapons to defend themselves. Absolutely defend yourself. There's nothing wrong with utilizing your Second Amendment rights. I'm for that. Protect yourself. Protect your families. Absolutely. It's sad when those things turn into horrible results, but you know what? Your family has to come first. That's the truth of the matter. Now, this looting. I do want to talk about this insane looting. I think we need to really talk about this. I read an article by Adina Kutnicki. I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. I'll throw this link in the chat room. Adina Kutnicki does an excellent job analyzing things. And, sometimes I just have to sit there and think about it because her analysis sometimes just makes me curious. And as I sat there and I looked at this and I think about everything I've been doing, what she's saying overall tells the truth. Now, her article is entitled NYPD Terror Chief. Nationwide violence was planned. Think about that. Here's her introduction. There is no other law enforcement agency in the entire nation which recognizes, understands, and has its fingers on the pulse of terrorism at large, be it green, Islamic, or red, or Marxist, socialist, communist, via its many moving and fluid parts akin to the NYPD's Counterterrorism Bureau. They live and breathe it, period. Now, this is not a bold assertion born out of thin air and so-called smack talk, not at all. Rather, it comes from the long-standing professional experience and a personal association thereof, the former as a somewhat knock-on effect from the latter, as such an edifying read. Among countless others, arresting to the same commences with terrorist cop. Extrapolate from there. But not to be lost in this most explosive discussion, it goes without saying, at least to those who have not been in a coma, that Bill de Blasio is a cop hater and is more in line with Marxist revolutionaries than with average American citizens. Of this, let there be no doubt. Ipso facto, without removing him from office forcibly, if necessary, the NYPD will remain castrated and unable to take care of business, that is, with their hands in their pockets as dictated by their real boss, the comrade mayor. Yes, this is the boss that has no problem with yelling at policemen for unholstering their weapons. Unholstering their weapons when their supervisor is nearly killed with a brick. Yeah. Not only that, relying on the FBI and its highly commissioned and infiltrated red and green alike terrorism bureau is a recipe for untold disaster. The reasons are manifest and manifold. Suffice to attest that the running indictment starts here. Adding the proper fuel to stamp out the national fire, American patriots must ignore the self-serving jibber-jabber spewing from most of the so-called leadership as well as from the media inciting mob. In reality, they are talking bobbleheads and completely removed from any standards of objective journalism, so much so they are in effect little more than whores bought and paid for by various players inside and outside of officialdom. Simple as that. Beyond the pale. As to the objective facts at hand, violence by police against blacks, the real statistics from 2019 bear out an incontrovertible and uncomfortable truth. For those who are hell-bent in burning down the country have nothing to do with justice for Floyd or another's death. So listen up. All of which brings us straight back to the NYPD Counterterrorism Bureau. Spot on, highly informed, targeted analysis as to what is really going down. CT school is in session. No pussyfooting allowed. Anarchist groups from outside New York City used the death of George Floyd and the protest it sparked as cover to plan and carry out violent acts in the city. The New York Police Department's terrorism commissioner said, quote, there is a high level of confidence within the NYPD that the anarchist groups, organized scouts, medics, and supply routes of rocks, bottles, and accelerants for breakaway groups to commit vandalism and violence. NYPD Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism John Miller said this according to New York's NBC4. There are strong indicators that anarchists planned for violence in advance using at times encrypted communications. This is again from counterterrorism expert John Miller. He also said before the protest began, organizers of certain anarchist groups set out to raise bail money, and people who would be responsible for raising bail money, they set out to recruit medics, medical teams with gear to deploy in anticipation of violent interactions with police. Miller said the anarchists developed a complex network of bicycle scouts to move ahead of demonstrators in different directions of where police were and where police were not, for purposes of being able to direct groups from the larger group to places where they could commit acts of violence, including the torching of police vehicles and Molotov cocktails where they thought officers would not be. Samantha Schrader, 27, of Catskill in upstate New York, was accused of throwing a Molotov cocktail at an NYPD vehicle and was occupied by 4 police officers. When she was being cuffed, federal prosecutors say that she bit one of the officers in the leg. According to charging documents, Schrader allegedly threw a Molotov cocktail at 1:12 a.m. in Brooklyn Saturday morning. The FBI said it shattered 2 windows in the NYPD vehicle and damaged the vehicle while officers were inside. The complainants allege the FBI was able to get video of the incident from a witness. Prosecutors say that Schrader has traveled the country committing various crimes, which include acts of violence, resisting arrest, including a 2019 officer interference conviction in Waterford, Connecticut. Antifa, one of the most visible and violent anarchist groups in the United States, has been blamed by several officials for much of the violence taking place since this month's riots began. President Donald Trump has said he would declare Antifa a terror organization. It's already been done, President Trump. It was done under President Obama. They were declared a domestic terror group. You ask anyone in Homeland Security, they should be able to tell you. And that's important knowledge. So Antifa is already acknowledged as a Homeland Security domestic terror group. But can they be a foreign terrorist organization? That's something to think about, because we're considering that if George Soros is financing them in any manner, this allows them to be considered as a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO. Are they communicating with other groups overseas? Are they getting directions from anybody overseas? And as I was talking to Todd Bensman, this is a real possibility. It's important to recognize this. It's insane what is happening. Can Antifa be called a terrorist group, an FTO versus the domestic terror group as it is already labeled? Yes. Because again, there is evidence that they are receiving financing from outside this country. There is evidence that they are receiving some directions from outside this country. There is evidence that Antifa is coordinating with other groups outside this country. So is Trump right that they could be labeled an FTO? Absolutely. Now, I had thought maybe not. But again, that evidence exists. There's not even a question about it. So could they become a terror group? Absolutely. Now, the only person, I'm surprised, this is the one time I think I will probably disagree with Claire Lopez. I believe it's possible. Claire Lopez is not for that. And I guess this will be my one time, maybe only ever, disagreement. I think that Antifa should be labeled maybe a foreign terrorist organization as well. Maybe they need to have those people under observation. It'll help us explain that the red-green axis is very, very real. Holy cow, this insanity is continually going on, and we're doing next to nothing in states like I'm in. Why? I live in New York State. This is where King Cuomo thinks that he'll do anything to stay in power. Oh my gosh, don't lessen restrictions because people might go to work and be independent of the state. Don't lessen restrictions because people might go to church. Don't lessen restrictions because people might have a chance to voice their own opinion. Wow. Don't lessen restrictions because if people get together, they share ideas, communicate, then you might have a rebellion on your hands. That's what Cuomo is really trying to do. He's trying to keep us, he's trying to stop our freedom of speech. He's trying to stop the freedom of assembly. He's trying to stop your ability to worship God. And that's where I'm in the full belief it is time for Americans to stand up and say, we aren't going to take it anymore. Because there is no reasoning anymore. The evidence is here. I just read it to you. There's no evidence of any other further outbreak. 21 states have reopened. A good lot of nothing's happened. They're in phase 1, phase 2, whatever they're in. They've had no growth. in COVID-19, there no growth rates. No growth rates in death. No growth rates in diagnosis. This is over. We should all be going back to work. This is insane. I for the life of me, I can't grasp how stupid we are in just accepting what we're told. Like I said, I'm angry. I'm angry because this happened in my community. I'm angry because my son was put at risk because some idiots wanted to go looting. I'm angry because it's black people who are getting hurt by a supposed, race riot. Okay, wait a minute. If you're complaining that black people are getting hurt by white people, why are you killing and hurting black people? I'm really confused. Let's talk about one of those murders. A retired police captain was gunned down by looters. The final moments of his life were streamed live. This is by George Hoyt in Law Enforcement Today. Happened in St. Louis, Missouri. The debauchery has officially come full circle following riots related to the death of George Floyd. This time, it was retired police captain who was gunned down and left to die. The aftermath of the murder of 77-year-old David Dorn was reportedly broadcast live on Facebook during the early morning hours of June 2nd outside of Lee Pawns and Jewelry at 4123 Martin Luther King Drive. 4123 Martin Luther King Drive. Yeah, a race riot where you killed a black man who was a police captain. Police say that Dorn was shot in the torso at approximately 2:30 in the morning. Various publications have reported that Dorn's actual murder was live cast online, but that is not the case, apparently. The live cast heavily reported on what was that of someone discovering his body after the shooting. Law enforcement today located the video where an unidentified young man happens upon the deceased body of Dorn. The video starts with the young man driving down the street and seeing the body of Dorn lying on the sidewalk. Yeah. And hear the person on the video say the following when he sees the body of Dorn. Oh my God, no, cuz, come on, cuz, not the old head, bro. The driver of the vehicle was recorded, wants to make his way over to the pawn shop where Dorn's body lay, and the vehicle passenger was warning the driver to not get out of the car. The driver responded, come on, cuz, that's somebody's granddad. Give me my thumper. The video continues from the perspective of the driver, and he appears to be holding some type of gun, which a thumper is a term often used for a firearm. While standing over the deceased body of Dorn, the person taking the video begins to shout out to those nearby, over some TVs, man, for real? This is somebody's granddaddy, cuz. A group nearby says something inaudible to the person filming, in which the person recording responds with a lot of expletives. You killed this man over some TV. When you can say that Black Lives Matter and you take the lives of an elderly black man, you're nothing but a liar. You are nothing but a liar. And to say that this is all Antifa is, again, nothing but a lie. Yes, a lot of the violence is done by Antifa. Just thoroughly disgusted. Like I said, in Rochester, New York, the violence that was committed here that you could see on video from a place that I walked by, a place I may have done business with at one time. There was four black men, took 8-foot-long 2x4s and beat a white woman with it after punching her in the head the first time. Not to mention they attacked her husband and beat him too. And this is considered Black Lives Matter? Kill the white man at the process? No. Sorry. Not acceptable. Not acceptable. All lives matter. Doesn't matter what your color is, what your race is. And then we get the idiots out there. Let's talk about the idiots. I know, and everybody should know, that this one particular idiot from Minnesota, oh, let's see if you can get it. It's the Attorney General of Minnesota, the one who hates cops. Oh, does anybody know who that is? Of course, that is Keith Ellison, the cop hater, Attorney General. The man who can get himself a picture with Antifa handbooks. The man whose son comes out publicly proclaiming support for Antifa. Yeah. He's okay with it. He hates cops. I wish I was wrong. You ask the police in Minnesota, they'll tell you. Jeremiah Ellison, this is from Fox News. Jeremiah Ellison, should double check and get the author. Tyler Olson is the author of this. Came out 3 days ago. Jeremiah Ellison, who is a member of Minneapolis City Council, noted in the tweet that he believes white power terrorists are actually the ones engaging in the looting, arson, and other riot activities as violent sects hijack some of the protests against racial inequality and police brutality in the wake of death of George Floyd last Monday. Okay, is it racial hatred if one of the cops is white, one of the cops is Asian, one of the cops is Hispanic, and one is black? How is that racial hatred? This has all been a scam. It's been utilized and coordinated. They've been waiting for this opportunity. This is why Adina said it is a planned event. This whole thing has been planned. They've had all these things ready. You can read tons of stories about them putting bricks, pallets of bricks out where people can use them to harm you and break windows. This is happening. And in states like mine, they'll arrest the guy, and then 5 seconds later, he's out on the street. Because of the insanity of the Democrats in charge who want their population to love them. Who's their population when I say that? I'm not talking about black men or white men. I'm talking about criminals. That's the only votes they're going to get this time. Because the criminals are being let go free. And who's doing that? Think about it. That's what they want for the vote. It's extremely, extremely frustrating. I am sick and tired of this insanity. I am sick of it. Why do I say that? Again, my son is put at risk because of this insanity. People I know that are getting hurt. People I know that are being stopped from doing simple things like worship. All because we have Democratic governors. I'm picking on Democrats. There's a reason I'm picking on them. Because they're the ones not opening their states. They're the ones slowing down the reopening. In fact, where I live, we were supposed to reopen a week ago. And Governor King Cuomo decided he would say, no, you can't do it yet. Again, he's not a king. Where's the legislature? Why aren't they acting? Why isn't someone standing up in any part of this United States? Where are the people who stand up and say, we aren't going to take it anymore? Where are the real people who decided to serve their country and become politicians? Did they give up? Did they decide not to go to work anymore and get paid? This insanity has to stop. It has to stop. I hope to God people will wake up. Like I said, I am sick to death of this insanity. I'm angry. I'm tired of it. I'm a writer. One of my ways of writing is actually going out to a coffee shop. I can't do that. Can't do that. It's slowing down my productivity. I'm angry. Now, I want to play to you one of these protests something that happened, one of these protests for Black Lives Matter in London. This should blow your mind. This happened in London, and it was an Aussie television lady named Sophie who got attacked. Now, this was live television, so I'm just going to play this for you.
But it descended into... Sorry.
Sophie, you okay?
Sorry.
Sophie?
Yeah, I just had someone come up and try and... Yeah.
You okay, Soph?
Sorry.
It's all right, Sophie.
Yeah, a man just came up and grabbed me.
It's okay.
He's okay, he's not armed. A man just came up and grabbed me, though.
The attacker grabbed Sophie during Adelaide's 6 p.m. news bulletin just an hour and a half ago. He yelled Allah Akbar while making motions to stab her. The man was chased down and detained by Nine's camera operator and bystanders until police arrived. It's unclear whether the man had a screwdriver in his hand or in his pocket, but he's been arrested by police for threats to kill and possessing an offensive weapon. Sophie is shaken but unharmed, which is good news.
This is the insanity that's going on around the world. The world doesn't understand anything but the propaganda ministry that's putting out this insane stupidity that this was a racist event. Again, the cops were white, black, Hispanic, and Asian. How is that racism? It's propaganda that you're being told. If you're being told this is racist, it is nothing more than propaganda. I know some outstanding black and white and Hispanic and Asian cops. I am not saying this wasn't murder. Believe me, I am not saying it wasn't murder. To me, it is murder. I think every one of them should go down. I've talked to some outstanding police officers that talked about how this insanity was started by people not following police procedure. That's what it was, at the very least. And not following police procedure, that's in some police manuals, it says in very large print, do not put your knee on someone's neck. If it says that in the police manual, do you think they should actually know it and have it ingrained? The man I was talking to talked about muscle memory and how this is something he should have known. It should have been ingrained in him. Yet the guy who was in charge, because he's the most senior, was the guy committing the crime. And the least seniors were there watching. And I talked to police officers about this. They all said the same thing. It's the duty of those at the scene. When somebody loses time due to adrenaline and this type of thing, sometimes it happens, they need to be tapped out and reminded. Not one of those officers did their due diligence and reminded him. No one did a thing. In my mind, that makes all of them equally guilty. These are, as Vito says, a few bad apples. And General Mattis says, they are a few bad apples. And as I've been saying, this whole insanity was just one event to activate a plan that would throw the country into turmoil for the whole purpose of fighting against capitalism, of fighting against the Republican Party, more so for fighting against President Trump. This is the goal. They realize we're going to be back in action for the election. Oh, they can't make that. Can't allow that to happen. Great question. Vito asks, shouldn't the police chief also be held accountable? Yes. Again, that's an excellent question because you know what? When I talk to the police officers, And I talked with, I was writing and reading a lot of what Kyle Reyes was putting out, his writers were putting out for law enforcement today. They talked about one major problem in this particular police department. So you're supposed to go through an annual training about takedowns like this. Here I'm saying, supposed to. It's my understanding that in some places they just sign off. It's highly likely that this police department does not do the annual review of this policy, the annual review of this training. And in that sense, that police chief should not only be fired, he may also get the charge of manslaughter because he didn't train his men properly. That's his job, to make sure that they got their training properly. And if they didn't make sure that that training was provided, in fact, he inhibited their ability to get that training, yes, he also should be held for that crime. Will it ever go that far? They talk about stuff flying downhill. But at this point, we should be tracing it right back up. Just as we should be tracing back the case with General Flynn. Let's work our way up and get every last one of those bastards who decided to go after him as well. It's time to stop the superiority of people being not prosecuted. This is supposed to be a country where people are treated equally. Let's prosecute equally. I'm tired of this. I'm sick of it. It's wrong. It's nothing but wrong. I don't usually go on the rants. I really don't. I'm angry. I'm tired of this insanity. I don't want this to continue. I like to communicate what's going on. I like to share what's going on. But when I look around me and I go down the street and I talk to a neighbor and somebody calls the cops and takes pictures of us and decides to say, oh, they're out talking to each other and they don't have masks. I mean, I'm putting all this together, all of this insanity together, because that's what it is. It's insanity. They're trying to take away your freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. It's got to stop. Wake up, America. I have students who love their constitutional rights. They talk about how they love their rights. But when people are out there taking the rights of others by beating on them and claiming their rights are more important, saying their race is more important than anybody else's race, we have a problem. I'm against racism as a whole. I don't care if it's black, white, Hispanic, whatever. It's wrong. In that respect, I want to go back to the news type that I've been working on and the stuff I've been working on with Islamic social norms. I want to share with you one insane thing. Just one. And I think it'll blow your mind. Racism. Now, I have been talking about how in Islam, racism is built in. And I have been saying this over and over again. I talked about it because my research determined that it is in. It is definitely within the Arab culture. And this week, Memory.org put this out. It's I'll tell you, this came from Memory.org. It's Palestinian journalist. Arab society, too, is steeped in racism, especially against blacks. This came out June 3rd. It's Special Dispatch number 8777. I'm just going to read this to you. And this is, again, this is not something I wrote. It comes from a translation of Memory.org's translation of an article. that is by a Palestinian journalist. The May 25, 2020 killing of George Floyd, a black man, by former police officer Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, and the ensuing protests across the United States sparked many reactions in the Arab press, which focused on accusing the U.S. of racism and discrimination, both towards its own citizens and towards other nations. In response to this discourse, Palestinian journalist Abdelghani Salama published an article in Palestinian Authority Daily Al-Yam titled, "What Racism Are You Talking About?" In it, he argued that Arab societies have also been steeped for millennia in racism and discrimination against minorities, women, and in particular blacks. He called the Arabs to acknowledge this racism and denounce it before condemning the racism of others. The murder of the American citizen George Floyd by a police officer exposed the extent of the racism that prevails in American society. But this case is not the first of its kind. The American police is often too harsh with black suspects. Moreover, the manifestation of racism are not confined to police brutality, but also characterize other broad sectors. According to the British Guardian, American blacks, including those from strong social sectors, suffer discrimination. They receive less pay compared to their white colleagues, receive different quality health care, and are sentenced to longer terms in prison if they are convicted of a crime. Judges are also quicker to sentence a criminal to death if he's dark-skinned. You know, I might have a few white students if I have that many. I think I have one. And I cannot remember any of them talking to me about racial discrimination. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm retiring in a few weeks, thank God. I'm done with this. But, I talk to a lot of young men, a lot of young women about discrimination. Is it actually happening today? Are you discriminated? Are you making less money because you're black? I ask these questions. And none of them say, no, I'm not making less money because I'm black. That's illegal. And yet this Palestinian person is telling this misinformation, this journalist. You would think if you were a journalist, you wouldn't be putting out propaganda. And again, it's in Palestine. You got to foment the hatred. We continue his article. Floyd's tragedy is also an opportunity for us Arabs to examine the forms of racism that have existed in our societies for millennia. Racism against blacks, against women. Okay. Racism against women? Do they not know what the word racism means? It's pretty evident they don't. Against people of other faiths. Again, they don't know what racism means. And also the disabled. Just as we demand to expose the American, Israeli, or European racism against the Muslim communities. Again, they don't know what the term racism means. Crazy. It seems that racism has been rooted in Arab societies for a very long time. Arab slave traders plied the Indian Oceans for centuries, carrying African slaves to the Arabian Peninsula and from there to the Old World countries. When Islam emerged and called for justice and non-discrimination and encouraged the liberation of slaves because of all men equal, Arab society did not heed this divine call. In Arab culture, the color black has negative, reprehensible, and pessimistic connotations, while the color white is associated with cleanliness, beauty, and optimism. The cultural trend is reflected in various popular proverbs and sayings, such as the curse, "May Allah blacken your face," or the saying, "A white penny for a black day," in which money represents well-being and whiteness signifies happiness, whereas poverty and deprivation are described as black. An Arab proverb says, when black man is hungry, he steals, and when he is sated, he fornicates. Dark-skinned people are sometimes called crows. Again, this Palestinian gentleman is talking about his fellow Arab, his fellow Muslim, and what they believe and their sayings. It sounds entirely offensive. It is racist. And in this country, if you were to come out and say these things, yeah, you probably wouldn't have a job anymore. One of my bosses is actually listening. So I'm hoping I'm not in too much trouble for sharing this information. But I want you to understand this information is out there. it backs what I read to you weeks